All right, welcome everybody. Welcome Control Trends. Shaun, Klann, come on and join the group here.
Good to see you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yep.
So Shaun, one of the things that I know, in addition to what Kenny had just mentioned, is high on your list and what you work with your clients is on the occupant experience, the tenant experience. We're starting to see that more and more become it's gone from the kids' table to the grown-up table, and we're starting to see more discussions. Tell us a little bit about it from your perspective, what you see, what you're doing, where we're going with that.
Sure, Mark. That part actually really excites me because, with 10, 15 years in this industry, we've spent a lot of time consulting around the business case around smart buildings, right? So we've had the opportunity here at Intelligent Buildings to build some financial models and business case for some of the world's largest global portfolios. And that's always been focused on what is the value proposition in the business case for the topic of smart buildings at large. Well, 10 years of that, we've vetted that out. We've proved that out. So the industry in this conference showed that we're moving beyond that.
Right.
And the next thing that's moving beyond that is saying, well, let's focus again back on the occupants and that tenant experience, right? So again, we're shifting mindset a little bit from ROI and dollars and things like that, because that's been proved out now. We know that. We have that data here in the industry, which has been fantastic. And now we're really trying to connect what everyone's daily life is at home, right, back to how their daily life is inside of the office, right? So we've become accustomed to smart thermostats and smart cars and smart TVs and different experiences at home even. And we want to bring those same experiences to the office, right? So now, how do we look at the technologies that are inside of our office spaces, which when you really look at it, are just an extension of web pages back to some type of a software somewhere, and how do we use that to empower the tenants and the occupants? So this is a great revolution that's taking place in the industry around thinking a little bit differently, and about how these experiences, these use cases, how we can tweak and massage the technologies to really create a better environment for the occupants.
But to that point, we talked about the value, the business case, and we've made that. But then tying the occupant experience to the business case. So for example, we've heard, and they're starting to do more and more studies on, that if a tenant in an office is happy, they love the environment as far as the climate and stuff, they're going to work longer hours or harder hours, be more productive and things like that. And I've also heard from the business side, that being able to maximize the lifetime value of a tenant adds a lot of business value to the real estate folks, so they don't have to continually change out and advertise for a new tenant. That keeping a tenant in their space for a longer period of time is more profitable to them. Have you guys looked at that from that perspective?
Yeah, I think we have. I mean, I think it's no secret that the cheapest tenant to acquire is a tenant that you already have, right?
Exactly.
So keeping them happy is kind of number one priority. And when we can look at little small subtle things like giving them control over the environmental conditions of their space, lights, blinds, shades, HVAC, it's a simple thing to do via a web page and technology that's been around for decades. It's just getting through that trust factor that before it was only certain individuals inside the organization that had access to that information, and extending it out to the occupant gives them the ability to have better control of their space. I mean, that's one of the number one things that there's lots of factors why tenants move out, right? I mean, relocations, outgrowing the space, things like that. But sometimes it's just looking for new, fresh experiences, And when we're in a competitive market, really depending on where the economy is up, whether it's in an up cycle or a down cycle, sometimes you need to just look at that extra competitive advantage to differentiate yourselves from the competition. And small things like that can go a long way.
So again, this whole idea, this notion about the occupant experience, is these types of discussions at the C-suite, or is it at the facility side, or is it both? Where would the Control Trend audience, where would you suggest that they begin those types of conversations?
Yeah, so no surprise that it impacts everybody, right?
Right.
So you look at how we're using those occupant experiences to better utilize our conference room space or our office space in general, right? So that's impacting people in leasing and people in different business units in terms of determining how much office space they need and how much floor space they need. You look at facilities and doing a simple thing again to empower the tenants to lower or raise the temperature in their space, right? There's been studies, and we've seen it firsthand with our customers, that the number of hot cold calls, a very simple thing like that, goes down tremendously, and just a little bit of simple empowerment like that. So it impacts all stakeholders, and in order to create those experiences, you often need to be able to have the integration between the different technologies, and of course that's where IT gets involved. You need System A to talk to System B, and often it's enterprise systems talking to facility systems. So it's an open dialogue that everybody needs to participate in, and I'd say the more people you can have in that conversation, the more creative you can get with these use cases. And we often call them integrated systems of operations, or integrated system sequence of operations, or system experiences. And these experiences are just a new twist on the existing technology that we've invested in for many, many years.
Ken, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you had a couple things you wanted to bring up.
Again, it's a great dialogue, and I love the idea that human engineering is emerging with HVAC engineering, so we're getting better results on that 330-300 rule, where the productivity, the reduction of absenteeism. We heard some pretty cool things about IoT. So my question is, one example we had was there was a study done by Intel using our IoT information, so contextualization, all the smart devices. People seem to be leaving by 10s and 20s every day in an office building around 3 o'clock, going out the primary lobby entrance and walking a short distance to a coffee stand. So they learned from there that they brought a coffee kiosk inside the lobby. It was doing enormously well. People were happy. They were away from the office less. What are some of the real tangible, making it real? What has IoT done that you could say, this is an example, we solved a people problem or some kind of a problem using IoT?
Yeah, so just great statistics around data that's either been around for a long time or just a fresh perspective of it. So occupancy data, maybe new technologies to leverage people counting and figure out how the space is being utilized. I think that's obviously we saw at the conference that it's a big mind shift in thinking about how are these spaces inside the real estate being utilized, right? And whether it's better asset utilization, better space utilization. That's a key factor, and we've seen all kinds of examples from how space is not utilized, less on a Friday or the day after Thanksgiving, and all these good studies on Fridays during the summer, right? Sure. So when we know that information, again, we can react with it, we can control the spaces better, we can plan better. So it's just an extension of taking that existing information and turning it into actual information.
When all this innovation and technology is there, and as you described it again, it's probably been around for a while. What is holding us back from marching forward uniformly to taking advantage of all this technology? What are the pushbacks that are still latent in organizations, and how do you overcome this?
Yeah, it's really, it's an education and a change management thing, I think, are the two. Yeah, I mean, I think one, you have to educate people that's it's a different approach, right? Absolutely. It's a new way of doing business, a new way to design buildings, new way to construct buildings, new way to operate buildings. It's not fundamentally different, but it's different than the way we've done things for many years. And we've seen that if you do it on one project, there's a bit of a learning curve associated with it, but then the individuals associated with that project take that learning to their next project and their next project, and it just becomes easy, it becomes status quo. So I think we're just in a place in the industry where we're just trying to get over that first hump, and as we get through these first projects where there's a little bit of a learning curve with it, we're gonna just see it be the standard, the norm. So
I think Eric's got a couple.
Yeah. So Shaun, the first time I met you, you were the moderator, if you will, at the Realcomm IBCon boot camp. And I think for our Control Trends audience, because we got a lot of integrators out there that are trying to meet real estate's demands, what sort of things first of all, talk about the boot camp, and what sorts of things are the real estate folks learning there that our customers might be interfacing with?
Yeah, no, the boot camp's been a great opportunity and experience. This year we're on our 5th year, right? And I think when we started, we never thought we would be doing, Introduction 101 to smart buildings for 5 years in a row here, and I think there's no reason why we can't do another 5 of this. It's a great opportunity for people who don't really, are looking to get just the initial education on what is smart buildings into this space. What can it mean? What are the opportunities? We start very simple, what is IoT, right? That's a great place to start. And sometimes we go from 0 to 100 and we start throwing out acronyms, and we need to kind of just step it back a little bit and kind of define out what are we actually talking about. So the boot camp's really about, first educating what is the topic, what is the space, who are the players. It then goes through a process to say, what are your objectives and your strategies? If you're going to take on this project, how do you go about doing it? One of the things we did this year, and we did it last year as well, is we brought back some individuals from some large property management companies that had been to boot camp in previous years. And they had learned something, and they had been sitting in the same seats that the attendees were this year. And 3-4 years later, they came back with some amazing stories of what they were able to accomplish in the industry. So it was really kind of bringing that back full circle to say, sit in the seats here, get educated, go out, take some action. It's really a call to action. Come back 4 years later and tell us about your successes.
Awesome.
One comment on the boot camp, and I've attended it, and this year I was in and out as time permitted. But I also look at it over the 5 years that you've done this, things have changed in our industry. So I think, for example, when we went to the very first one, and I believe I was at that one, it was about connectivity, it was about integration, it was about interoperability. Today, I believe that that's a given. But you brought in, and Tom mentioned it earlier, we talked a little bit about data analytics. We didn't talk about data analytics in boot camp, the very first one, or whatnot. So are there things that you've added to this whole content area, if you will, that we didn't have in the first 1 or 2? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So I think, over the last 5 years, the industry has gotten just a little bit more confusing and noisy, right? Because there's new solutions out there. Fault detection diagnostics, visualization, single pane of glass technologies, optimization softwares. There's a whole host of great vendors out there providing a lot of different solutions. And in a lot of cases, they're similar, dissimilar, they have overlapping features and so forth. But one thing we've learned is that it's impossible to do an apples-to-apples comparison in this industry because there's no two softwares, technology, solutions out there that are identical, right? So it's a very kind of snowflake-like analogy and evaluation process. So one of the things we did in boot camp this year was we really boiled down to what the building blocks of a smart building program and strategy are, right? What are the fundamentals from IT convergence to end device protocols to the feature sets that you're going to use, whether it's visualization technologies or optimization technologies, cybersecurity, all those different things, right? So we had the building blocks, and we took the attendees through a process of really identifying what are the foundational elements of a strategy, what are the structural elements, and then what we identify as the finish elements, right? These are things that are very unique to your organization, but your only ability to get to those finish elements is if you first lay the foundation and the structure. So that really enabled the attendees to kind of get a roadmap, if you will, of how do you lay all these different building blocks together, so that you end up with a sound solution at the end of the day.
I think you had...
Well, Shaun, one of the things I think you guys do so well, and again, Tom mentioned it before, is those building blocks, the foundation. I think people gloss over that. I don't think they understand how important it is to get, like the players, we always think it's all C-suite. You got to make sure you got the finances, but actually you got to get everybody. It's like a band. It's like a string section, the percussion section, the horn section. Inside of a building, you have 8, 9, 10 possibly different interest groups that if they're not behind it, they retard the process. They don't get it, and they don't agree with it. And then just tell us then too, how do you go around making those learning sessions easier? I really I just really appreciate the fact that you guys do it modularly and you do it simple. You speak a very simple talk to explain to these people what's going on and how to set objectives.
Yeah, I think, with your first question on the building blocks and the stakeholders, that was something that, to be really honest, we only got to that understanding with 10, 12 years of experience. When we started the conversation, we thought we had all the answers with just the network connectivity piece or just the open protocol piece or whatever it was. But it was really the evolution and the journey that we all went through over 10 years of consulting in this space that brought us to identify that there's a lot of different kind of secondary building blocks and secondary components to an overall arching strategy, and they're secondary stakeholders as well. When we first started the conversation 10 years ago, it was just facilities and maybe IT. And we talked about that for many years.
Sure,
you guys know, for
absolutely,
many years at
absolutely.
this show, we talked about facilities and IT. But then as we got more sophisticated in the programs that we worked with our customers, we realized what other stakeholders we need to bring in the mix to be successful, whether it's sustainability, leasing, asset management, real estate, energy. There's all kinds of different stakeholders that have a voice in this, and it's really important that we get them involved in the conversation very early. And it's been a learning process, even for us as consultants. It's been a learning process, and what we strive to do is take that learning from one customer and from many, many accounts over decades of experience and bring that to each individual new engagement that we have.
One last question I want to ask is, we've seen, as you know, we've introduced new technology to the industry, new approaches, all that. We get the foundation and the building blocks. Have you seen the value proposition change over the years? And if so, what is the key value proposition from the consultative side that you think is important today that you talk to your clients and prospective clients about?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the value proposition has definitely evolved, and it certainly changes from customer to customer. There's no one single value proposition. It's going to be a little bit different from everybody. But what I can tell you is that the common themes we see from a value proposition are, yes, the tried and true are always there from an energy standpoint, energy reduction, operational reduction. That's there, and again, that's kind of table stakes on the conversation. The next level of value proposition is kind of where we started the conversation with the tenant and occupant experience,
Absolutely.
right? People are more
Sure.
focused on that. And the other aspect of it is, you know, and I know you've talked about this a lot, and we've talked about a lot at the conference, but cybersecurity,
Yep.
right? That's again a new value proposition that it's one of those things that if you don't do, the risk of not doing it is so great, right? So you have to pay attention to that. So I think those are some of the new value propositions that we're starting to pay attention to. And the last one I'd say is a little bit of innovative or die kind of a philosophy, or just keep current with your peers and status quo. I mean, in one of the
Good
sessions
advice.
we talked about today, it was, is how long is it before smart buildings technology becomes, analogous to your elevator? You
Right.
expect an elevator in a building.
Right.
You expect a fire alarm system in a building. So it's not that far along where you expect your technology to be the same in the building.
So, sorry, one more. So, with this idea about expecting, do you want to go out on a limb for the Control Trend audience and say, by such and such a date or in X amount of years, it will be expected?
I don't think it's that far away.
Okay, good.
I think it's
Good.
going to
That's a good
be.
thing for all of us.
I'm going to say it's under 5.
Okay, good.
It's under 5.
All right, folks, you heard it here. Smart building technology everywhere within 5 years. Shaun Klann, Executive Vice President, Intelligent Buildings. Thank you for being our guest.